Dust hung motionless over the Wyoming basin, a thin brown veil that even the wind seemed too weary to lift. Ethan Calloway rode the fence line of his dead ranch with no cattle left to watch, counting posts more from habit than hope. Since the fever carried his wife and infant son in late spring, the man had spoken only to the mare and to the whiskey bottle he kept under the porch plank. Near sundown, as thunderheads heaped bruised purple beyond the ridge, Ethan saw something that did not belong to sky or fence, a dark shape crumpled where prairie grass met wagon ruts. At first he thought coyote kill, then the shape moved, just enough for the copper light to glint on skin. He dismounted. A young black woman lay half-face in dirt, dress torn to stripes, one bare foot blood slick. A band of rust-stiff iron still circled her ankle. A broken shackle filed jagged on one side. Near her ribs, a ragged bullet groove oozed sluggishly. Cloth smelled of black powder and river mud. She lifted her head but made no plea, only watched him with eyes muddy from pain. Ethan cursed under breath. Mercy was a tool he hadn't reached for since the graves. Yet habit outweighed grief. He slid arms beneath her, surprised by how little she weighed, like a quilt soaked then wrung out. She stiffened at his touch, but the pain stole fight. He set her side saddle before him, one hand steadying her slumped shoulders, and turned the mare toward Thunder Ridge. The sky cracked once, dry lightning with no rain scent. The Calloway house still stood square, though widow quiet. Shutters shut, chimney dark, porch rocking chair frozen mid-sway. Ethan carried the girl inside, laid her on the spare bed that had held his child's empty crib. Cobwebs trembled as if startled. He boiled water on the cold stove, added pine resin and sage. Old Sioux remedy his wife once trusted. Bandage cloth came from a christening gown never worn, cut into strips. As he cleaned the wound, her breath hitched, but she did not cry out. When he pressed stitched linen, she caught his wrist, eyes flashing worry more than threat. "Shelter till dawn, that's all," he said, voice hoarse from disuse. She studied him, measuring truth, then released. He poured water, lifted enamel cup to her lips. She sipped, each swallow careful. Only then did he notice the rope burns at both wrists, the scabbed welts across his shoulders, marks of a chain gang or worse. He looked away before pity thawed something he'd iced for months. Storm wind rattled shutters after midnight. Ethan sat on floorboards outside the room, rifle across knees, as though ghosts might push through locked door. Behind cedar planks, the girl's breath settled into an uneven rhythm. Each exhale reminded him the house still heard living lungs. His eyes sagged, but memories staved sleep. Fever sweat on Clara's brow, infant Caleb's stillness, the fresh mound under a cottonwood that now leaned drunk against sky. He tipped bottle, but amber revolted him tonight. He corked it. Near dawn, a dull clang jolted him upright. Iron shackle ringing floorboards. He entered. The girl tried to stand, panic in her wide whites, body folded by pain. He raised both palms. "You'll tear the stitching." She forced voice through cracked lips. "Sunrise, I must keep moving." The accent carried coastal Carolina softness, smothered under fear. "No one rides under that storm," he answered. Outside, first light glimmered on anvil clouds. She swayed. He offered an apple slice. She chewed like a cornered fawn. He pointed to the bullet groove. "Another mile and you'd bleed dry." Quiet stretched, thick as quilt batting. Finally she spoke. "Name's Liza. Ran from Colonel Garner's crew when they marched west." Her gaze flicked to ankle iron. "Shackle says property." Ethan lifted the broken ring gently, examined crude hack. "I'll cut same metal once more. Proper." From barn he fetched cold chisel, hammer. One strike freed iron, ringing like distant bell. Liza watched the cuff drop, disbelief trembling eyelids. "You could sell me back," she whispered. Ethan straightened, jaw tight. "Lost enough souls to coins." He stepped away before his own words reopened hurt. Sun broke late, filtered through ash of storm. Liza dozed fitful while Ethan patched roof leaks, hands grateful for work that asked nothing but nails. Each hammer strike echoed down hall, driving sorrow deeper where whiskey couldn't reach. At noon he found her awake, fingers tracing quilt stitching. She flinched when he entered, but steadied. He placed tin bowl of beans, salt, and a half biscuit, his pantry near bare. She murmured thanks no louder than moth wings. Silence brewed between them until thunder again prowled horizon. Ethan mumbled, "Ride south tomorrow. There's a mission station 3 valleys over." He didn't say he hadn't spoken to the padre since funeral. Didn't say he feared walking land where Clara's laugh once ran ahead of him. Liza's eyes drifted to window, where a single wild sunflower pressed against glass, bent by wind yet bright. "One night comes and goes," she said, voice low, "but sometimes it teaches breath to stay." Ethan tried to answer, but words clogged. He fled to porch, storm wine sharp against grief. Yet when shutter banged loose, he secured it, mind repeating her phrase, "teaches breath to stay." He realized house hadn't smelled of sage and pine since Clara boiled herb tonic. It smelled so now. Night fell again, lightning farther this time, like trouble reconsidering. Inside, Liza slept deeper. Ethan sat by hearth cold since spring and, almost without meaning to, laid tinder, struck flint until spark took. Small flame licked blackened iron, the first warmth the house allowed since its laughter died. He whispered into crackle, unsure to whom. "One more night then," but the sentence ended lost in popping wood. Clouds finally skinned the sunrise in peach. Drops of night steam still clung to the porch rail when Ethan opened the door. Inside, the house felt different. Timbers no longer hollow but humming faint from the spark he'd left in the hearth. Liza lay turned toward the window. Her chest rose fuller, skin less ashen now that a line of pink stitched across the bullet groove. He noted new sweat beating her brow, the fever he'd feared. He crushed willow bark, stirred it into tin cup water, set it on the stool within her reach. She woke, pupils wavering between sleep and alarm until memory bled in. She managed a nod, small motion, heavy gratitude. Ethan's mare nickered outside, sensing weather shift. He saddled, rode fence to check whether thunder had toppled posts. Prairie breathed smoke blue under early haze. Halfway round he spotted churned hoof ruts, 4, maybe 5 riders, cutting across South Field toward the dry arroyo. Too deliberate for drifters. He tightened reins, cantered home. Liza had finished the willow drink, blanket drawn to chin. Fever flush mottled her cheeks, but eyes focused. He told of tracks. She stiffened. "Garner's men ride chestnut geldings, 1 iron-shod bay. Sound like them?" Ethan confirmed bay prints. He weighed choices. Mission station trip now suicidal. She couldn't ride fast. He couldn't shoot 5 rifles with 1 good gun. The barn offered hiding but no escape. He looked to Thunder Ridge cliffs, cutting north like busted teeth. Legend said outlaw caves honeycombed the basalt, never mapped. "Can you walk a mile of rough?" he asked. Liza breathed once, tested ankle. Pain twisted brow, but she nodded. He packed biscuits, jerky, small canteen. In the barn, he loaded spare shells, slipped Clara's old shawl around Liza's shoulders. Rose print wool swallowed the torn navy dress, blending dust colors. They left by back gully moments before first rider crested far fence, silhouette crisp against morning. Thunder Ridge loomed like a stranded ship, red hull pockmarked with shadows. As they climbed goat path switchbacks, sun-torched sweat from Ethan's neck. Liza's breathing frayed, yet she refused pause longer than swallow. Rifle shots cracked faint below, warning blasts to scare quarry. Ravens spiraled overhead, crying as if cheering the hunters. Around a jutting spur, a narrow crevice opened. Man height, furred with sage roots. Ethan guided her inside. Tunnel dipped to cool twilight. Smell of damp flint replaced grass. 10 strides in, cave widened into chamber lit by seam of daylight knifing roof. Ancient fire rings, outlaw graffiti, dates from decades past scarred the walls. Ethan led deeper until daylight shrank to pinhole. He struck match, lit stub candle. Amid shadows he glimpsed items left by ghosts. A rusted pot, tin cup, kids' marbles blue as glacier ice. Liza lowered to rock ledge, shivered. Fever peaked again. Ethan's soaked kerchief pressed to her brow. Bootfall echoed at cave mouth. Rock skittering. Voices bounced. Check every hole. Ethan pulled Liza behind basalt pillar, doused candle with thumb. Darkness swallowed them whole. Footsteps advanced, two men by sound. A lantern halo bobbed, throwing jagged silhouettes. Closest hunter trailed fingers along wall. His lantern light brushed Ethan's coat hem but slipped on, drawing deeper. Second man muttered, "Bats stink in here." Lantern bearer snorted, cursed Garner for chasing one runaway girl. At chamber throat they paused, deciding going farther risked ambush. After tense minute they backtracked, silhouettes shrinking, finally vanished with echoing boots. Ethan kept still long after light died. Lisa's breath shook. When silence resettled, he whispered, "They'll circle Ridge. Come back." She whispered back, voice reed thin. "Ridge hides north spillway. Creek drop." Ethan searched memory. Clara once sketched these bluffs. A water vein disappeared under talus, re-emerging valley far side. If creek still ran, hunters on horses couldn't follow narrow sluice. He helped Liza stand. Tunnel sloped narrow, yet each step downward cooled the fever. They crawled beneath leaning monolith until rock turned damp. A silver thread of water veined floor, widening to knee-deep flow. Liza waded first, grime and dried blood swirling away from skin. Tunnel ceiling lowered, they half stooped, water chilling ankles. After 50 yards, light pricked ahead, sun lensing through cascade mouth. They emerged behind curtain of spring water that fell into grotto pool, ringed by cottonwoods. Beyond, meadow rolled open, untouched by hooves. Up ridge they heard distant gunfire, hunters still on wrong path. Ethan broke a willow branch, fashioned stretcher handle. Liza leaned but walked. Sun westering, they found a half-collapsed trapper cabin near meadow edge. Inside, cobweb-draped bunk, cast-iron stove, box of salt still caked, but usable. Ethan cleaned cabin swiftly, laid Liza down. Fever receded slower than light, but held shy of delirium. That night they shared charred rabbit, Ethan trapped, eaten in silence broken only by creek murmur. Flames flickered on cedar log, painting the scar beneath Ethan's collar, the spot where Clara's ring used to rest. Liza's gaze settled there. She reached out, then drew back. Boundaries. Ethan met her eyes, neither flinched. He asked finally, "When did you last choose where to wake?" She stared at fire, spoke low. 8 years old, before slavers took Carolina shore. She swallowed. Since then, every morning belonged to someone else. Words lingered like smoke. Ethan nodded, understanding in marrow. He stood, stepped outside where night hummed cricket psalms. Ridge skyline glowed silver. For first time since Graves, he questioned if sunrise could belong to him again. Inside, Liza fingered the rose pattern in Clara's shawl. In flicker light, the petals shifted, almost breathing. She whispered to cloth, "Teach breath to stay," before sleep folded her. Dawn found hunter tracks skirting ridge top, then veering south, Garner's patience thinning. Ethan saddled mare, rode scouting, spotted riders breaking Camp Valley below, heading east for Trail Town resupply. Safe window. 2, maybe 3 days. He returned with sacks of root bulbs and a hammer salvaged from trapper bin. Liza sat outside warming in sun, color in cheeks. They built lean-to, awning, patch cabin roof. She insisted on gathering creek stones to fashion new fire ring. Shackles once chained her, now she hauled rock freehand. Ethan watched protective, but also in quiet awe. Her steps still limped, yet carried dignity rough weather could not scour. On the third morning, while buttering salt bread, Ethan caught himself humming melody Clara used to bash out on battered piano. He froze, startled by sound produced. Liza looked up, soft smile forming. "House remembers music," she said. He flushed, shrugged. Yet that night, when stars pawed at eaves, he found harmonica buried in saddlebags. Gift from a ranch hand years back. He offered it. She shook head, then nodded shy. She pressed lips, breathed tentative note, low, raspy. Second note clearer. She played 4, 5, tune unsure but alive. Ethan felt ribs open the way cabin door had after long winter. Outside, ridge wind carried faint echoes. Garner's men might still prowl, but cabin walls expanded with each note, making room for something resurrection-shaped. The harmonica's last tone still haunted the rafters when dawn colored the creek bronze. Lisa awoke before Ethan, bending gingerly to test her healed flank. Pain answered only as dull memory. She stepped outside into dew-chilled air and found frost crystals on the shawl's rose petals. Each sparkled like pinned starlight. She raised the fabric to face, whispered a soft hymn she half remembered from Carolina hush nights, then set about kindling new fire. Ethan emerged a moment later, surprised by smoke already curling from the chimney he'd patched. "House beats me to chores now," he muttered, voice rough but not unkind. She handed him a tin cup of chicory brew, savory, faintly sweet from creekside peppermint she'd found while foraging. Their fingers brushed. He did not pull away. By mid-morning they shared silent labor. Ethan felled a dead piñon, splitting it to joists for a real porch. Liza mixed clay and straw, plastering chinks that once let winter haunt the room. The rhythm felt like weaving. His hammer, her smoothing palm, hammer again. A shy ease settled. Words became unnecessary. The mare grazed near alder trunks, tail swishing in lazy arcs, as if sensing change. At noon a hawk's cry broke the hush. Ethan's shaded eyes saw dust banners far to the south, not yet rising high but steady. "They resupplied," he said. Liza followed his gaze. 5 to 6 riders maybe, closing canyon mile by mile. "Time to choose," she answered, steady though pulse leapt. "Run farther or stand." Running meant abandoning the first place where her breath had picked its own pace. Standing meant betting 2 lives against rifles. Ethan looked at cabin walls, new porch joists, harmonica on sill. He nodded, decision bone deep. "If we leave now, we keep leaving." She met his eyes. Resolve mirrored. They prepared the ground rather than pack. Ethan dug shallow firing holes into the rocky berm northeast of the cabin, best line of sight to the valley lip. Lisa filled buckets at the creek, set them near doorway, memory of plantation fires still keen. She also gathered creek stones, laying them like beads across windowsills to deflect ricochet. When heat peaked, they shared jerky and hush, listening to distant hoof thunder roll louder. Late afternoon delivered a gift. Wren Talbot trudged into clearing, driving 2 skittish goats stuffed with bulging saddlebags. She read fear in their faces before words. Liza quickly explained. Wren nodded as if battle lines were crops and storms ordinary. From the pack, she produced 4 Union-issue Henry rifles wrapped in burlap. Relics she'd bartered years ago, and a pouch of cartridges. "Ghosts of war guard new wars," she said with a small, sly grin. Ethan's brow lifted, gratitude unspoken. They sighted rifles along porch rail. Liza handled one. Finger on trigger, she exhaled slow, recalling nights forced to watch overseers practice on fence posts. Here the tool returned to her grasp under new flags. Evening bled salt pink. Dust plumes sharpened into mounted silhouettes at canyon mouth. Exact count 5. Garner Riding Center astride the iron-shod bay. Shadows stretched like bars across meadow. Ethan knelt beside Liza behind porch barricade of stacked cordwood. Wren on rooftop perch with scope. They waited. Garner's voice carried first, lazy and loud. "Calloway, you harbor stolen property." Lisa's jaw flexed. Ethan stood visible, rifle leveled. "Only free souls here." Garner laughed. "Barony buys laws. I've got the governor's ear." Liza stepped beside Ethan, shawl caught in sunset. "You lost chains," she said, voice clear over distance. Garner's men fanned, rifles lifting. Wren squeezed first shot. A distant rider's hat flew, horse skittered. Chaos erupted. 3 return volleys pinged cabin log. Ethan fired deliberate, dropping another mount without killing rider. Dust cloud churned. Garner retreated behind boulder, shouting curses. The firefight settled into tense rhythm. Minutes of silence, sudden crack, splinter spray. Bullets chewed new porch joists. Goats bleated terror inside barn. Sunset died, gifting violet gloom. Liza passed cartridges, hands steady. Thunder Ridge echoed each blast like drumming cliffs. As night thickened, Garner ceased shooting. From darkness, his voice slithered. "Daybreak, you die slow." Girl back in chain, ranch ashes. Hoofbeats hinted withdrawal to set camp. Confidence in superior numbers by daylight. Inside Ethan barred door. Wren descended ladder, eyes bright. They'll rush at first light, she said. Need surprise. Liza unrolled crude map Clara once sketched. Ethan kept among grief relics. It showed old irrigation ditch leading from creek behind cabin to meadow's blindside. She traced finger. We flood grass at night, mud bogs, horses at charge. Ethan's grief-softened eyes sparked. They set to work. Trench shovels, redirecting creek with makeshift sluice gate using barn boards. Water gurgled, slipping under moon toward Garner's likely approach line. Wren scattered pitch-coated tumbleweed along ditch edge, ready for torch if need. Past midnight cabin glowed lantern dim. Ethan noticed Liza's fever flush gone. Only strength shone. He touched edge of bullet scar. She let him. Words surfaced, trembled. You gave me house breath again. She answered, palm to his chest over long empty scar. You taught breath to hold. Silence wrapped them fuller than blankets. They dozed in shifts until pre-dawn. Fog licked meadow, thicker than funeral smoke. Garner's silhouettes emerged exactly where ditch ran hidden, hooves thudding. A shout rose, horses plunging, fetlocks sucked by fresh mud. Wren lit tumbleweed, blue flame leapt, revealing chaos. Ethan, Liza, and Wren fired measured bursts. Spooked mounts reared, men toppled. Garner alone cleared ditch, charging straight porch. Ethan's rifle clicked empty. Liza stepped forward, shawl flying, leveled carbine. Garner halted meters away, pistol up. Dawn split horizon. First beam struck iron ring at her foot, now hung on the porch post. She fired once. Bullet shattered Garner's gun hand. He screamed, fell to knees. She approached, rifle steady. Property no more, she said. He cradled bleeding wrist, rage puddling into shock. His remaining men fled, dragged wounded companion. Garner staggered up, but Ethan's fist landed, sending Barron down. They dragged him to busted water ditch, bound him with rope he once used on others. Sun lifted, washing meadow gold. Creek water pooled red-brown around Garner's boots. Freed from threat, silence ripened into birdsong. Wren exhaled long. Goats resumed nibbling. Ethan wrapped arms around Liza. She trembled. Release, not fear. Behind them, cabin windows shimmered with morning. The shawl's wild roses fluttered in breeze, petals bright as new names. No gallows shadow reached ridge. Gun smoke still clung to the porch rail like cobweb gauze, but fresh coffee beat it back. Wren Talbot's kettle hissed on the stove. Cedar scent rose through floorboards. Bare recap woven in. Garner lies roped at the flooded ditch, his men gone. Outside, meadowgrass bowed under a new weight. Fog burned away to reveal Garner sitting against a cottonwood, wrists wired, eyes dim with pain and disbelief. His fancy bay grazed 40 yards off, saddle askew, as though ashamed of its rider. Liza brought a tin cup, handed it without a word. Garner tried to spit, nothing left but dust. He looked at the iron ring nailed above the door, her former shackle, then down. Ethan packed the wagon for town. 1 bale of proof, the broken shackle, 4 sworn affidavits in Wren's tight script, and Garner himself. He checked Winchester once, then turned to Liza. I faced the marshal. You face paperwork. He meant the homestead claim. She nodded, fingers briefly finding his. The ride south was a page of silence. Garner sat on wagon bed, wrists tied to rail. Liza rode horseback behind, shawl flowing. Sagebrush brushed hooves. Thunderheads piled harmlessly now. They arrived at Dry Bluff's dusty street near noon. Townsfolk paused, seeing Ethan return after months ghosting. The county marshal, iron-browed, listened as Ethan spoke 5 sentences. Trespass, assault, kidnapping attempt, prior abuses. Wren added ledger numbers. Whip marks tallied like debts. Marshall weighed Ethan's scar. Liza's bullet groove. Wren's calm. He looked at Garner's ruined hand, then stamped warrant executed. Territorial court in 2 weeks, he said, jerking Garner toward the stone lockup. Garner's eyes flicked wide. Someone inside cell coughed laughter. Across the street, the land office door squeaked. Liza stepped in, shawl folded proper. Sunlit motes drifted over shelves of blank deeds. The clerk, round spectacles, tin inkwell, glanced at her skin, hesitated, then noted the marshal's escort at her shoulder. Paper mattered more than prejudice. She signed Liza Rose Calloway, last name cracking Ethan's heart open like thaw ice. Clerk stamped, sealed, done. On porch, she handed deed to Ethan. He read once, twice, then touched the ink as if verifying pulse. Wordless, they shared a half smile scented of cedar, and fear fled. Week passed in repairs. Ethan erected gate posts where shotgun pellets had chewed boards. Liza caught creek trout with hands patient from cotton-picking days. She grilled them on juniper, sprinkling salt with a grin shy but sure. Wren returned to her valley loom, leaving goats as permanent guardians. Storm season ended in sudden hush, replaced by cricket choirs. One dusk, Liza found Ethan sitting at graves under leaning cottonwood, harmonica silent in lap. She knelt, set a wildflower bundle, sage bloom, creek mint, one rose from shawl fabric she'd snipped. Neither spoke. His hand found hers. The quiet felt less like absence, more like room being made. They sowed winter wheat in a tilted acre. Liza's healed side still ached with each swing of mattock, yet rhythms soothed, soil scatter, breath, soil scatter. Birds followed for worms, chattering approval. She carved small rose etchings on the corner posts, the same secret language she once feared to show. Ethan built a cradle from the spare porch pine. He planed edges smooth, carved thunderbird feathers down each rail, memory of ridge flight still living in his hands. When he showed her, eyes wet, she rested her palm atop wood grain, not needing words. 2 days before court date, a Pinkerton coach rattled into Dry Bluff, bearing deputy writs and newspapermen. Headlines already printed, rancher and slave girl shoot baron. Ethan expected barbed questions. Instead, the reporter, hat in hand, listened to Wren's ledger, to Liza's scar, to Ethan's missing laughter. He left with notebook heavier than rumor. In court, Garner stood pale and sling. Testimony lasted hours, most from his own surviving men, angry over unpaid wages and near drowning. Jury returned quick, guilty of kidnapping, attempted murder. Sentence 20 years Yuma. Garner's eyes frosted, but no bribe thawed the verdict. When guards led him away, Liza exhaled a tremor stored since Carolina nights. Marshall congratulated. Territory owes you back taxes on that creek lot. Ethan shook head. Just keep the water clean. Marshall tipped hat. Outside, pressman asked Liza if she was still the wounded girl. She met Len square. Name's Liza Rose Calloway, free woman farmer. Flash powder popped, capturing shawl roses vivid. One winter's first hush drifted early, flakes landing on new roof shingles like timid hands. Inside, stove glowed steady. Ethan poured coffee. Liza stitched baby quilt squares, sunflower yellow, river blue, cedar brown. They didn't speak of future children yet. Quilt simply prepared room and cloth. One night, wind stilled so completely candles held hard flames. Ethan unhooked the iron ring from porch post, carried it to creek. He placed it beneath running water, stone over top. Liza watched, shawl around shoulders, rings of current lap metal till only faint glint remained. They walked back side by side, snow creaking under step. Cabin windows lit them amber. Inside, harmonica waited. Ethan played the prairie lullaby. Liza hummed harmony, eyes closing in trust. Fire snapped. Outside, Thunder Ridge cast no more gun shadows, only silent profile against moon. Snowmelt whispered through every crease of Thunder Ridge, turning the creek outside the Calloway cabin into a quick, glassy laugh. Spring's first sun slid between cottonwood limbs, warming the cedar porch that Ethan and Liza had hammered straight through December squalls. Inside, the stove rested cold. Winter's siege was over, and the house no longer needed iron fires to keep breath alive. Liza Rose Calloway stood at the doorway, shawl traded for a simple linen blouse stitched by her own hand. She pressed fingers to the frame. Cedar grain felt like a heartbeat and inhaled damp earth, faint pollen, far-off hint of newborn calves. Behind her, the cradle Ethan built rocked in a breeze that slipped through chink cracks. Its emptiness no longer hurt. It simply waited, a container of future. Ethan stepped from the barn leading two sleek yearling heifers purchased with the county's back tax compensation. Their hides shone wet, burnt umber in sunlight. He paused when he saw Liza's quiet smile, then tied the heifers to hitch rail, removing his hat as if entering a church. Micro recap woven in. Months since the gun quiet. Garner gone to Yuma, land deeds certified, wounds closed inside and out. Grounds near ready, he said. Words carried lightness foreign to the man who once checked fences for ghosts. Liza nodded toward Tildacre. Rain tomorrow. Seeds can drink. She lifted a sack of wheat grains, hips steady now that bullet scar had knitted strong. Ethan reached to help. She shook her head, mock stern. House manners, owner Sal's first row. He laughed low. A sound creaked stones answered with scattered echoes. They worked in tandem, Ethan carving furrows, Liza dropping kernels, pressing earth like folded blessings. By noon, sweat beaded on foreheads. Distant meadowlark sang its single silver question. Liza glanced up the ridge where Wren's loom smoke usually drifted. Today, no thread rose. The widow had ridden east to barter wool. Calm wrapped the valley. Ethan finished last furrow, set hoe aside. Liza pointed toward cottonwood graves. Show me their song, she said. He guided her up slope to where two wooden markers stood, edges weather-silvered. Clara Calloway, an infant, carved by Ethan's shaking hands a year ago. Wild violets clustered now, seeded by Liza in secret during early freeze. Ethan knelt, traced carved letters, whispered something Liza couldn't hear. When he stood, moisture rimmed eyes but did not fall. They sat on flat rock. Liza reached inside apron, retrieved a scrap of loom cloth. Sunflower and thunderbird feathers tangled in blue stream. Wren said threads hold memory like roots, she murmured. She tied the cloth around the base of Clara's marker. Wind caught edge. It fluttered, small flag of dawn. From valley floor, faint rumble. Stagecoach, wheels on dry road. Liza's pulse tightened until dust banner proved mail coach, not rifles. A rider broke off, trotted toward cabin, telegraph courier. He handed Ethan a sealed envelope, galloped back. Ethan lifted brow, handed it to Liza. She unfolded carefully. Lydia Jameson's bold script. Rail company buying milk contracts. Cheyenne Press prints your story next Sunday. So if you still play harmonica, a music teacher in Omaha wants to hire both of you for a traveling show. Song of Freedom. Write soon. Love. LJ. Liza laughed, surprised by how musical it sounded. Roads keep calling, she said. Ethan considered horizon, then cabin smoke hole. Maybe songs travel but roots stay. He tucked a letter behind breast pocket, safe yet undecided. They descended ridge, passing the creek where Iron Shackle once lay buried. Snowmelt had uncovered it, gleaming half submerged. Liza paused, knelt. She pried the ring from mud, water streaming, and slipped it into apron. Reminder, she said. Ethan took it, eyed rust. He walked to blacksmith stump, set ring on anvil, struck with small hammer until metal flattened like broken halo. He handed flattened iron back. Liza smiled. A new talisman, stripped of claim. April sun fattened. Wren returned, towing 2 wagon loads of loom orders, humming victory tune. She delivered a parcel, baby linen from churchwomen who read newspaper serial about the grieving rancher and wounded girl. Liza thanked her, though cheeks flushed. Ethan shrugged good-natured shame. Newsprint had grown wings. That evening they lit supper candles. Ethan played harmonica, the lullaby Clara once favored. Liza joined with low hum, voice now strong enough to weave through every note. Wren tapped tambour on table. Smoke curled to rafters carrying cedar sage scent, different from grief's odor last spring. As flame guttered, Ethan rose, fetched a small leather pouch he'd whittled during snow nights. Inside lay a narrow copper band, etched with tiny rose and thunderbird. He knelt beside Liza's chair. Not a grand gesture, rather a quiet joining. Need a partner in more than deeds, he said. Liza's breath hitched soft. She set flattened shackle piece beside pouch, placed her palm over his. Already partners, she answered. But she slipped copper onto finger where it glinted under firelight. Outside clouds gathered silent promise of rain. Seeds under tilled soil waited. Cabin walls exhaled. Harmonica rested against sill. Tomorrow goats would wander. Creek would sing, and mail coach might bring another envelope. Or not. Dawn would rise. Breath would stay. If this 5-chapter trail led you home, tap like, hit subscribe, and let a comment ride. Which moment? The first quiet rescue, the porch gun quiet, or the copper ring? Struck deepest. Your words keep the stories traveling.